A Subway worker was killed over an argument about too much mayonnaise. 26-year-old Brittany Macon was working at a Subway in Atlanta in June 2022. It was a normal day at work for her until a terrifying incident occurred. She was working with her colleague Jada Statham, who was 24 at the time, when a man named Melvin Williams entered the store. It's believed that after ordering food, an argument erupted between him and the employees over him having too much mayo on his sandwich. The store owner described how all hell broke loose. Brittany was shot and tragically died as a result. Jada's 5-year-old son was actually in the restaurant at the time and witnessed the whole hideous ordeal. Jada was shot, but thankfully she survived. Melvin is charged with murder and aggravated assault among other related charges. Thankfully, he is currently behind bars while he awaits his trial, which has not been yet scheduled.
My parents locked me in a freezer for 2 weeks. My name is Marina Sabatier, and I am 8 years old. I was born in 2001 of an unwanted pregnancy, and my mother initially abandoned me but changed her mind after a month and regained custody of me. From the age of 2, my mother began to abuse me. She deprived me of food, hit me, and made me take cold showers. She would take me to the basement to beat me so that the neighbors wouldn't suspect. She would also force me to eat my own vomit. As time went by, the torture became more and more violent. My parents would tie me to the bed with tape and force me, for example, to swallow spoonfuls of salt and vinegar. I stopped going to school because I was too mentally and physically exhausted from my mother's beatings, and the others might have suspected something. One day I succumbed to the beatings and died in the basement where I used to be beaten. My parents put my lifeless body in the freezer for 2 weeks, then put me in a plastic box and covered it with cement. Shortly after reporting my disappearance, my parents confessed to my murder and were sentenced to just 30 years in prison.
Have you ever wondered why no anime character looks like a human? Well, that's because they're actually based off of cats. Okay, so this person asked, why in Japanese anime do none of the characters look Japanese? And it's because anime characters are cats. The goal of manga anime was neither Japanese nor Caucasian. The theory that if you pursue cute, it resembles a kitten is influential. No matter how you look at the profile nose, it's not human. And just take a look, that does not look like a human nose, but it does look like a cat's nose. Just look at this picture for 1 second. Are you actually going to tell me that these characters do not look like those kittens? It's honestly identical, and it's just cats in kind of a human form. Japanese anime characters are actually based on kittens and not Westerners. So the real question is, if you're obsessed with anime and think all the characters are cute or hot, does that mean you find cats attractive? I'm just joking, but this is absolutely mind-blowing and I never heard about this until today. So please let me know your thoughts on this because I'm extremely curious. This is what will happen when Kim Jong-un passes away. Up first, the entire country of North Korea will be completely devastated, and they will all be crying in the streets. This is because they literally look at Kim Jong-un as a god. This is because he brainwashed his citizens this bad that they actually believe this stuff. So it's like losing a parent to them. Next up, North Korea will most likely collapse. If political order was not restored quickly, the country could easily and most likely go into a civil war. Also, Kim Jong-un has no family member to take his place since he killed his own brother. That was the only one that could have taken his place. Next up, there very well could be a nuclear war. We all know Kim Jong-un has spent a lot of time and energy on creating and producing nuclear weapons, and we all know he threatened the world to use them multiple times. So what if his dying wish is to launch all of his nuclear weapons onto the world and just completely take everybody out with him? This is absolutely scary, but if there's one man that would do this, it's definitely Kim Jong-un. Okay, so this invention might be able to save you from the end of the world. Okay, so we all know that a great flood or a tsunami is one of the most likely things to knock out humanity. It's been told to happen in the past, like with Noah's Ark and other stories. But what if it happened today? How would we prepare? Well, an Australian shipbuilder whose name is Matt Duncan designed a tsunami survival pod that can withstand 6 tons of debris and hold up to 4 people. And the thing is, it only cost $8,500, so let me know if you're going to get it.
Died by drinking 14 liters of water in a competition to try to win a Nintendo Wii console. My name is Jennifer Strange, and I was 28 years old when I decided to participate in a competition that was broadcast on the local radio in California. The contest, called Hold Your Pee for a Wii, was simple. The person who could drink the most liquid in 1 hour without using the bathroom would walk away with a Wii, and I really wanted it for my children. The competition started, and I drank over 14 liters of water. I quickly began to feel dizzy, nauseous, and had a severe headache. Several times I complained about the pain I was experiencing, but the organizers pretended not to understand. One of the hosts even laughed, saying I looked pregnant. A few hours later, while I was at home, I died in my bathroom. My body had taken in more water than it could handle. I died, leaving behind my 11-month-old daughter, my 2 boys, and my husband. The local station KNBR, which had organized the competition, was sentenced to pay a fine of $1.7 million to my family, and the show's host, Dave Sholin, was fired.
This woman jumped off a top-floor balcony to escape her jealous boyfriend. 28-year-old Amy Beckley had been dating 28-year-old footballer Shaquille McDonald for about 6 weeks. Shaquille played professional football for clubs such as Derby County and Coventry. She said that in the first few weeks of them dating, he love-bombed her and showered her with affection. She was a single mum and really appreciated having someone looking after her and caring for her. However, she saw a completely different side to him when they were on a night out in March 2023. They'd been out in Arcadian in Birmingham when he accused her of speaking to a bouncer. He snatched her phone and keys and called her derogatory names and made her get in a taxi with him. In the taxi, he put her in a headlock, bit her, scratched her, and slapped her. After they got home, CCTV captured him launching another vicious attack at her. He smashed her into a concrete wall, dragged her inside, and strangled her repeatedly. She lost consciousness and he left the room, and when she came to, she tried to ring 999 on silent. However, she became so terrified of him that she jumped 14 foot from her top floor balcony to escape him. She broke both arms in doing so. Now, luckily her fall was broken slightly by a balcony below hers, and someone had been outside having a cigarette at the time. They helped her inside and got her some help. Police arrived and Shaquille tried to flee but was detained. Amy was in an absolutely horrific state. You can see the images on Google if you want to go and look at those, but they are really shocking. Shaquille was jailed for just 2 years and 8 months after admitting to actual bodily harm and strangulation.
I played darts on my mother's decapitated head. My name is Ed Kemper, and here's my horrible story. One evening, my mother returned drunk from an evening. She was making a lot of noise and woke me up, so in an excess of anger, I slit her throat and tore her head. I inserted my penis into her decapitated head. Then I hung his head on the wall and threw darts to play. I finally crushed the bones of the skull with my feet and pulled out his tongue. His tongue kept shouting and complaining. I ended up calling the police and denouncing myself. Then I was imprisoned for life. I wanted to commit suicide twice in prison, but I was saved by guards.
Man did the unthinkable to a hospitalised child in Blackburn. It was the 15th of May 1948 in Lancashire. June Ann Devaney was just 3 years old when she was admitted to Queen's Park Hospital in Blackburn with pneumonia. She was under the care of nurse Gwendolyn Humphreys on the night in question. Now, little June had actually improved quite a lot and she was due to be discharged the next morning. Then, disturbingly, at around 1:20 a.m, while the nurse was preparing things in the back room, she felt a cold draft and noticed a door open. She went to see what was going on and was horrified when she saw one of the cots was empty. She then noticed something terrifying, a trail of adult footprints leading to the door. The nurse raised the alarm and contacted police. At 3:17 a.m, tragically they found the little child's body. She was face down in the grass not far from the ward. She was partially clothed with bloodstains on her body. The hospital immediately became a crime scene and a murder investigation began. The post-mortem found that the child had been AR'd and had teeth marks in her. A taxi driver reported to police that he had picked up a man with a local accent close to the hospital on the night of the crime. Now, the killer's fingerprints were actually found on a bottle next to June's cot. Over 46,000 sets of prints were tested against these until finally a match. The killer was Peter Griffiths, who eventually confessed. He pleaded guilty due to insanity and said he was drunk at the time and killed June in a fit of rage. He was found guilty of the crime and sentenced to death and was executed aged 22.
Barbie has a much creepier history than I thought. I'm going to show you some theories about Barbie that have been keeping me up at night, and I cover all sorts of creepy and true crime stuff, so follow along. In 2010, Barbie released a doll that had a camera on her necklace as well as a video screen on her back. This doll has since been discontinued, but there's a lot of rumors about what happened to this footage when it was recorded. So people have always theorized that the footage was collected and sold either by Mattel or by someone more nefarious. And it's been mentioned how easy it would have been for hackers to collect and sell all this data. The FBI even put out a statement about it. Barbie also released and discontinued the Hello doll, which could listen to children and respond with over 8,000 pre-recorded answers. A lot of parents worried that these dolls were potentially recording their children and then selling that data, but this doll also has really concerning reviews. Like, people say that the doll won't take no for an answer. Like, if she asked if you wanted to hear a story and then you said no, she would actually push back and then just tell you the story anyways. And the doll would also ask really specific and targeted questions about children, like how big their families were and if they had any siblings. Was this doll just collecting market data on children, or was it something much weirder?
This former teacher made an unaliving pact with a student that she kidnapped and assaulted. This is Kara Dickey, and she was 34 years old when she assaulted a 14-year-old student of hers. Now, at the time of her arrest, Kara Dickey was a middle school teacher. She was married, she had kids of her own, but she somehow got involved with a 14-year-old student of hers. And quickly, the relationship between her and her student grew from platonic to extremely inappropriate. She was sending him inappropriate text messages, and at one point it began to get physical. And on the afternoon of June 16, 2008, she went to the kid's house, picked him up, supplied him with rum and various over-the-counter drugs, and then took him on a road trip visiting many locations around the Buffalo, New York area, all the while they were engaging in inappropriate behavior with each other, if you know what I mean. And in an even more disturbing twist, she actually made a pact with the child that she was abusing that they would both take their own lives if they were ever caught by the police. Obviously, this never happened because she was caught by the police, brought to trial, and she was convicted of the assault of a child. And she served a few years in prison for these charges, but she was released in 2014 and just 2 years later was back in prison because one day she said she was done with parole, she cut off her ankle monitor and went on the run. Now, obviously, the police eventually caught up with her again. She was sent back to prison, and then after her release in 2018, she violated the terms of her parole again and was sent back to prison. And this time, people thought that she may have been involved with another child. I don't know, people like this are dangerous, and this story goes to show that pedophiles aren't always men.
Part 2 of the Amara Carson case, just a quick trigger warning here. Amara's injuries are horrific and it's particularly hard to listen to. Amara had been beaten so severely that the multitude of fractures to her skull connected with each other. Her brain was torn, an arm and a leg had spiral fractures from being twisted. Her torso had been squeezed with a lot of force until her ribs and sternum broke, and there were 24 human bite marks all over her tiny body. Her head and face were completely swollen and bruised. Her liver was torn, as was her private area. Underneath her tongue was torn, and she'd also been strangled. The severity of Amara's injuries made it impossible to tell which was the final injury, so a cause of death couldn't be determined. Eventually it was determined that Amara had been tortured for around 30 hours, with different stages of the exorcism occurring. Blaine had been the one to cause all the injuries, while Jessica sat in another room listening to her daughter's screams. Jessica said that Amara had managed to escape the room a couple of times and run towards her, before Blaine took her back into the room to be tortured further. Jessica was fully complicit in the murder and she made absolutely no attempts to protect her child. The couple were arrested for the murder of baby Amara. They were both found guilty. Jessica was sentenced to life without parole for capital murder, while Blaine received the death penalty. Blaine Milan was due to be executed by lethal injection on January 21st, 2021. However, he won a stay of execution and remains on death row.
Okay, so this is kind of a weird thing that's happening, but the head of Scientology, David Miscavige, is reportedly missing. He's currently under investigation for child trafficking, and lawyers have tried to serve him 27 times in the last 4 months, but no one knows where he is. The charges come from 3 victims who claim that Miscavige forced them to work on boats as children after they were also forced to sign a $1 billion contract. In Scientology, they consider you to be an adult at 6 years old. One of the victims also claimed that after her mother left Scientology, the victim was forced to stay in a closet for 48 hours. All of this, of course, also comes after Shelley Miscavige, David's wife, has not been seen since 2007. even though recently it's been reported that she might be living in Big Bear, California.
This girl vanished after seeing H in concert in Birmingham. What police found in a park the next day shocked the community. Keely Bunker from Tamworth in Staffordshire had only just celebrated her 20th birthday. 12 days later, she was going to see H in concert to continue the celebrations. It was the 19th of September 2019 and Keely and her friend attended the show. Afterwards, they headed to the nightclub Snobs. The girls were having a seemingly normal night out and were surrounded by friends. This included 20-year-old Wesley Street. Now, Keely and Wesley were actually childhood friends. They'd known each other since infant school, so this wasn't unusual. They headed back to Tamworth in a taxi after the night out, and Keely's friend Monique actually offered her to sleep over at her house. However, Keely replied quite chillingly, "I've got Wes, he'll walk me back, it'll be fine." That evening though, Keely would not be fine. She trusted Wesley to walk her home, but he took her on a detour. It's believed that he may have convinced her to go to the rugby club to have a smoke with him. When Keely failed to turn up for an interview the next day, her dad rang the police. Everyone knew that Wesley was the last person to have seen Keely, so the police questioned him. He claimed that they had walked home together and he'd last seen her by a phone box by his house. He gave police a detailed account of their route back and seemed like he wanted to help. Tragically, Keely's body was found at 9 p.m. that night, lying face down in a pool near the edge of Wigington Park. Wesley was arrested and tellingly, police noticed he had scratches on his face. GPS, DNA and CCTV evidence all proved that Wesley's account of what happened that night was a lie. CCTV captured the pair at Tamworth Rugby Club at 4:23 a.m. Keely's bag was found a short distance away. Wesley's jacket was found in the park with makeup all over the sleeves. His DNA was also found on Keely during a post-mortem, which proved he had SA'd her. He was found to have choked her to death before going home to bed. In court, he was also found guilty of 5 further S offences which took place in 2015, 2017 and 2019. He faces a minimum of 29 years in prison.
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
This entire family have been missing since February. Monica and her 2 sons, Aidan 11 and Nicholas 9, are thought to be in grave danger. So where are the Lutz family? Stephen Lutz, 44, a drug user and suffering from multiple personality disorder, turned up at the family home on the 10th of February in his pickup truck with a U-Haul attached to the back. The whole family left the residence and haven't been seen since. The phones have been disconnected and his wife and 2 sons are thought to be in grave danger. In January, Monica and her 2 sons were seen fleeing from the house barefoot. They ran to a neighbour's to call 911. Stephen had become extremely violent and had punched Monica in the face. Stephen was arrested, given a restraining order and warned to stay away from his wife and sons. Stephen was already known to the police. He'd been known to them since 2006 for his use of methamphetamine and for his violence. What's really scary about this story, and the main reason I think that this family are in danger, is that 11-year-old Aidan told his grandmother and his sister, who's estranged from the parents, that he twice walked in on his father talking to a clown mask on his bedroom wall. What he said sent actual shivers down my spine. He said, "I know what I have to do. I have to kill 3 people. First my wife Monica, then Aidan, and then Nicholas." This is the boy's older sister who's estranged from both her parents. Aidan had texted her on the day of the disappearance, saying that the family were going on vacation, but he didn't know where. His phone was disconnected shortly after. The family home was inspected on April 3rd. There were sheets on the windows, and the once immaculate house looked as if a tornado had hit every corner. There was an open suitcase on the bed, and it looked like someone had been packing but got disturbed. According to Gia Wright of the Missing Persons Awareness Network, Stephen had stole $10,000 from a safety deposit box belonging to his mother the day before the disappearance and told her, "You're never going to see me again." The last place that the family's phones pinged their location was Richmond, Indiana, and their car registration plate has been scanned in 7 states in the US, but hasn't been registered for several weeks. It's an absolute mystery, and I pray that this family are found before something terrible happens.
This is Ghost Rider 2.0, one of the worst cartel execution videos ever explained. Just like the Ghost Rider cartel video, this video is extremely hard to watch. The video is kinda short, lasting only 1 minute and 35 seconds, and as you play the video, you see a man with his hands tied behind his back, and he is sitting on the ground wearing jeans and a blue shirt. His head is bleeding and it's clear he got multiple injuries off camera. Multiple men can be heard in the background and one of them seems to be interrogating the victim. As the victim is being interrogated, another man pulls the rope around his wrist, making sure it's tight. And for whatever reason, they place a hat on the victim's head. The leading theory is that it represents some gang which maybe the victim is part of. They then smack the victim around for a couple seconds, then another man enters the shot carrying a log that was recently in a fire. The log is smoking and smoldering, but it's not on fire. You see the hot charcoal glowing at the end of the log. The man then gets the log and places the hot end against the victim's chest, which makes the victim let out a terrifying scream. The victim then rolls around on the ground trying to get away from the man, but he then places a hot log against his back, and again causing the victim to scream horribly. The video then jump cuts and it shows the man pinning the victim down with the log by pushing it into the back of his neck. This immobilizes the victim as he's forced to take the unbearable heat of the log. At this point, you see the victim's jeans have been stripped and you see the skin around his thighs peeling off. This is due to the severe burning done off camera. The victim continues rolling around, but when he turns over on his back, he is then burned with the log on the side of his neck. They stop burning the victim for a couple seconds and he then sits up. Then, another man pours a clear liquid over his head, completely soaking his hair, clothes, and face. The other man then places the red-hot log between his legs, burning his exposed genitals. And this is where things take a turn for the worst. The video then jump cuts again, and it shows the awful sight of the victim's head being set on fire as well as his genitals. The fire completely engulfed the victim's head, face, and shoulders. Though he is still alive rolling around on the ground, which is why people refer to this video as Ghost Rider 2.0. As the video continues, the men insult the victim as he's on fire. The video ends as the victim is still alive rolling around on the ground, but he has stopped screaming at this point. This could be due to his damaged vocal cords from the fire. There's no reports about the victim's fate, but it's safe to assume they ended up killing him. This video and case is absolutely horrific, and it's just sad and scary that stuff like this happens daily to people. Take this warning and never go searching for this video because it's absolutely horrible.
Harvey Weinstein is one of the worst sexual predators in American history, and he was able to get away with these horrific crimes for years, so let's take a look at his story. I'm going to warn you right now, we're going to go through some graphic details, so viewer discretion is advised. Harvey Weinstein was born in 1952 in Queens, New York. In his youth, he and his brother were concert promoters and brought a lot of musical acts to New York City, including bands like The Who and the Rolling Stones. And eventually, after making some money with this concert business, he and his brother started a film production company. This company was named Miramax, named after the Weinstein's parents, Miriam and Max. Miramax would go on to become one of the most successful companies in all of Hollywood. And I mean, just look at this. This is a sample of some of their films, from Scream to Tarantino films to No Country for Old Men. In the 90s and 2000s, you pretty much couldn't watch a good movie without seeing the Miramax logo up front. And this led Harvey Weinstein to have incredible power in Hollywood. I mean, this guy's touch was like the Midas touch. Pretty much anything he touched turned to gold. He and his brother just had this way of looking at movies where they could take even a bad movie and turn it into an overnight success. And people in Hollywood around this time said that they loved Harvey Weinstein. They were thanking him in all of their speeches at awards shows. They were claiming that he was one of the best people on the planet, that they loved him so much. Even people like Michelle and Barack Obama hosted him at one of their events. I mean, Harvey Weinstein was plugged up with the elitist of the elite. I don't know if that's how you say that. In 2005, Harvey and his brother left Miramax and started their own company, the Weinstein Company. And this company would also go on to produce a number of huge Hollywood films. And everything was going swell for Harvey. That is, until the year 2017. And also, before we get to that, I have to add in here that Harvey Weinstein was a hard supporter of Roman Polanski. He said that they should just let the case go and they should never charge Roman Polanski for what he did to a minor back in the 70s. So 2017 was a year of reckoning. And in October of that year, the New York Times and the New Yorker posted stories about various women that had come forward with allegations of assault against Harvey Weinstein. These had all been A-list Hollywood actresses that had been assaulted by Weinstein in public, in his hotel room, in his offices. And when this started coming out, I can remember people started to realize that Harvey Weinstein was an absolute monster. So according to all of these women that came forward, there was almost a pattern in Harvey Weinstein's assaults. He would invite promising actresses to come to his hotel room, his office, wherever he was staying, and he would act like this was going to be a business meeting or something that they had to come to. But when they would get there, he would be in a state of undress. He might have been in a bathrobe or in his underwear. He would ask them for a massage, and when they would say no, or even if they would participate in it, things would take a dark twist and he would then assault them. There were also dozens and dozens of other A-list celebrities and women who came forward who said that even though he hadn't physically assaulted them, he had harassed them so many times that they had to tell him to stop. There are also actresses out there that claim that because they rejected Harvey Weinstein's advances, he totally ruined their careers in Hollywood. He would go forth and make sure they could never work on a production in Hollywood, and he basically put a stop on their careers, even if they were getting really big. So this is really a story of power. Harvey Weinstein had so much unchecked power in Hollywood because he was such a successful producer and head of such a big studio that he was allowed to do whatever he wanted to. And in my opinion, lots and lots of people knew that this was going on, people that worked closely with Harvey, and they just chose to say nothing for so many years, which I think is just so utterly and completely disgusting. I also do want to note here as well that Harvey Weinstein was really good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and he and Jeffrey had invested together in the past. So all this came to a head when on May 25th, 2018, Harvey Weinstein was finally arrested. And eventually, after the trial, Harvey Weinstein was sentenced to 23 years in prison in New York, and he was set to serve his sentence out on Rikers Island, one of the most notorious prisons in all of America. Eventually, he was extradited to Los Angeles, where he took part in another trial, and just this year, he was sentenced to 16 more years in California. This means that his prison sentence is almost 40 years long, and hopefully he'll never see the light of day again. This is a story of power, of corruption, and how so much unchecked power can lead to some of the worst things imaginable. And it shows that even the elite members of our society aren't fully protected or given immunity from their crimes. And that even for Harvey Weinstein, when the bell tolls, sometimes you have to answer the call.
Killer accidentally admitted to his crimes by accident when he forgot he was wearing a microphone while taking part in a documentary. This is how a true crime documentary exposed a killer. In 1971, Robert Durst met Kathleen McCormack and they got married. At the time of her disappearance in 1982, Kathleen had nearly graduated college. She was last seen by a witness at a dinner party where she appeared to be upset. She got a call from Robert and left. Robert admitted to having argued with Kathleen that night, but he said he put her on a train to New York and then never saw her again. Her friend called police to report her missing. Interestingly, Kathleen had been treated at a medical centre for facial bruises weeks prior to this and told the friend that Robert had done it. Robert had actually been dating someone else for some time prior to this and had been living separately to Kathleen. When her family broke into her cottage to try and find out where she was, they found the place had been trashed and her possessions put in the bin. Kathleen's family always believed that Robert was involved in her disappearance. In 2000, Susan Berman, a friend of Robert's, was found murdered. Now, she'd actually provided Robert with an alibi for Kathleen's disappearance. Now, pay really close attention to this next bit. Days after she was killed, a letter addressed to the Beverly Hills Police Department contained Susan's address and the word cadaver on it. On the envelope, Beverly was misspelled. Robert admitted in 2005 that Susan had called him shortly before her death to say that the police wanted to question her about Kathleen going missing. It's believed that Robert killed Susan to keep her quiet. In 2001, Robert's neighbour's body parts were found floating in Galveston Bay. Robert's elderly neighbour, Morris Black, had been killed and Robert was arrested. He was actually released on bail and fled and was found about a month later in Pennsylvania. He was found with $37,000 cash, 2 weapons, and interestingly, Morris Black's driving license. In court, Robert claimed he was acting in self-defense. He said he'd accidentally shot Morris and dismembered his body. Due to lack of forensics, he only got 5 years in jail. This is where things get really crazy. HBO was filming a documentary called The Jinx. During production, Susan's stepson found a letter written by Robert. This contained the same spelling error in the word Beverly as the anonymous letter to police. This implicated Robert in the murder. Now, while filming the documentary, Robert needed the toilet. He forgot that he had a microphone still attached to him. He was recorded talking to himself. He said, "There it is, you're caught. You're right, of course, but you can't imagine. Arrest him." And then he said, "What a disaster. He was right. I was wrong." And finally he said, "I'm having difficulty with the question. What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course."